All right. Welcome to another Office Hours live virtual Q&A. My name is Veronica, and I'll be your host today. I am the career coach behind Atypical Careers. And today I'm so excited to be bringing you one of our most popular topics in past, if anything has, if previous indications have been wow, I really messed that up. But anyway, so job hunting is a really, really relevant thing, especially right now, especially for neurodivergent folks. And I'm so excited to be bringing our guest expert today, Ashley Cross, who is also, specialized to helping neurodivergent folks as well in the career space. So we're going to be going through some pre-submitted questions today. Feel free to follow along and chime in the comments if you have anything you'd like to ask or like to say during the session here. But please do keep your cameras and your mics off just so that you don't get caught into the recording as well. But just before we get started, let me introduce myself for anybody who doesn't know me. My name is Veronica, and as I said before, I am the career coach behind Atypical Careers. I myself, focus exclusively on helping neurodivergent professionals navigate their careers and build sustainable work lives, which we know can be a real challenge to do in this world. Part of that is job hunting, and obviously with job hunting comes a lot of different barriers. So that's why we brought on our guest expert today, Ashley Cross, who has a wealth of experience within the career and within the career recruitment space here. They are an educator and a career counselor at Across Careers. Ashley, could you maybe take a moment and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Veronica. Thank you so much for having me on this. I've been a fan of your Facebook page for a while, and we've been chatting. So I'm very excited to be here. So my name's Ashley, or Ash Cross. I go by either. And then my pronouns are they, them, and she, her. So either one's fine by me. I'm a career counselor, job search coach, and educator, and have been working in higher education for the past 12 years up until recently, where I started my practice full-time due to the high demand of neurodivergent job seekers. So I help specifically with career changers, those who have been tired of masking, maybe put on a PIP, maybe medical leave, who are now trying to understand what other career options are out there, specifically related to their transferable skills, and create a game plan for developing those technical skills to make a career pivot. So I've been doing career coaching for 12 years now and have worked with way too many job seekers, over 6,000 between the workshops and the one-on-one appointments and group coaching sessions. So everything from education, healthcare, all the way to niches like quantitative finance at Carnegie Mellon. So very excited to be here, very excited to see how I can help you all.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that introduction, Ash. And so as I mentioned before, we are going to be going through some questions today. Some of them are pre-submitted. However, if you do have your own question and you haven't had a chance to submit it just yet, feel free to drop it in the comments, and we'll do our best to try and address as many of those as possible as time permits. So again, feel free to chime in, chat in the comments. We want this to be as interactive as we can. So without further ado, Ash, why don't we jump into the first question? How does that sound?
Sounds perfect.
Let's do it. Okay, well, the very first question, and I'll read out the questions here just so that we can all hear it. The question is around application strategies. So so it says, what are some ways to handle overwhelm and anxiety around the application process? Ash, why don't you kick us off here? What are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first off, overwhelm's completely normal when it comes to the application process. There are so many job postings out there, and it's really hard, especially if you're recently laid off or if you're just now attacking the job search. It feels like it's impossible to know where to go. So I think a big thing, first and foremost, is to take a breath, focus on mindfulness, and really remind yourself that you are an amazing candidate. You have a lot of skills. It's a matter of where you see yourself putting those skills. So what I work with my clients on, especially at the beginning, is becoming aware of what you want and what you don't. So I'll usually have them work on a handout focusing around that and what skills they want to leverage and what particular job duties they want to avoid. So the idea to avoid overwhelm is to really get clear on what you're looking for. So this might also be related to the commute, related to the type of job, part-time, contract, full-time, related to what type of industry or job function. So for some of us, we are geographically limited. So then you have to consider, okay, I want something I can commute to within less than an hour, or I need something that's work from home. So I need to understand where the job boards are and what the jobs are that I'm qualified for. So really getting a focus on what criteria you're looking for, and then focusing from there on what skills do you bring related to that criteria. What can you highlight in your brand, in your resume, in your LinkedIn? Focus on that. That's kind of the next step. But first is knowing what to look for.
Absolutely. And just to build on some of the things you said there, I feel like a lot of the overwhelm and anxiety that we experience around the application process has to do with the question marks and with the blank spaces that we have in our heads. We don't know exactly what our ideal workplace is yet. We haven't done that work yet. And so with those question marks comes a lot of anxiety that will fill that space. Of course, a lot of it also comes from, things like fear of rejection, things like, feeling burnt out because it takes so much energy to do job hunting. Those things are all realistic. But, it's so important to identify, where this overwhelm and anxiety is coming from, and then figuring out ways that you can mitigate it. And remember, it's never going to go away completely. Unfortunately, we don't live in that kind of world. But think about if you could improve it by like 30%, even just 30%, how much more of a difference that would make in your effectiveness in job hunting, and hopefully in your success doing so as well. So yeah, hopefully that helps a little bit there. Is there any last couple of things you would add to that, Ash?
Yeah, definitely. I know for me, working with a therapist was huge, making sure I take care of my physical health. So I spent a lot of time outside when I was working on the job search. So focusing on those activities that renew you. But like Veronica said, 30% better, or even sometimes it's 1% better. So trying to do something that was a little more than yesterday. Or for me, I don't do well if I say 3 to 5 days, I'm going to go work on this for however many hours. That's just not how my workflow is with ADHD and TBI, so traumatic brain injury. And so when it comes to that, what I'd like to say is I'll submit applications, maybe 2 to 3 applications, more days than not. So having that perspective of, okay, each day I'm going to try my best to, and then I'm also going to pay attention to that and just try to do 1% a little bit more each day. For me, that's really kind of the sustainable job search strategy that's worked for myself and my clients.
Fantastic. Let's move on to the next question here. How do I answer interview questions that aren't clear or straightforward? My brain takes so long to process questions, and I struggle to make a good impression. And how can I manage interview anxiety in general? So that's a couple of questions in one question there. Ash, why don't you take the first shot at it? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to work backwards with how to manage interview anxiety in general, and then go back to how do I answer the questions. So managing interview anxiety, excitement, it's kind of takes your breath away if you let it. And so you can be in your head too much with trying to figure out what they want. At the end of the day, all you can do is the best you can. And so really focusing on, for me, it's a lot of my anxiety lives in my body. So I have to do stretching, or I'll walk around, or I'll do the, we call it a Wonder Woman pose, where I'll go to the restroom and I'll put my shoulders back and my arms on my hips and really just try to focus on I'm confident, I'm qualified, and I am going to wow them. So I'm bringing my best self forward. And also remembering that you got to the interview, so you have what they're looking for. And they are ready to be done with interviewing candidates. They want you to be the one. They want you to succeed because they are also ready to be done. And at the end of the day, the interviewer is just another person. So they're trying to get to better know you. And often they're not really trying to trick you. They're trying to understand your thought process and how you've handled things in the past. Before I move on, Veronica, do you want to add anything to that before I switch to the other side of this question?
Yeah, I think you covered a lot there. And I think like one of the biggest things is that, yes, acknowledging the fact that there is a power dynamic at play. And, it makes sense why your brain is scrambling because, maybe you're feeling that you're being, that not only maybe you're uncomfortable being perceived in general, but like, for a lot of people, it's that, fear of judgment. And really, if we, for me, I've been on the recruitment side of things as well. So, I know both sides of it. And I really echo what Ashley says is that the majority of interviewers and hiring managers are really looking for, that pairing there. They want this to work out just as much as you. So hopefully if that puts your mind at ease and some reframing is helpful, that is something I absolutely agree with. Ash, did you have more you wanted to add to this?
Yeah, so I also wanted to make sure I answered the question about what if they're clear or not straightforward with what they're looking for. So I encourage my clients to look at behavioral questions or even role-specific questions by asking ChatGPT, here's the job description, what types of technical and behavioral questions can I expect? When it comes to the behavioral questions, I encourage clients to time themselves. I'm ADHD and prone to oversharing, so I focus on a 1 to 2 minute time frame. And I focus on something called the STAR method, or for me, it's the START method. So you can look this up online. It has to do with situation task, basically bringing up the background of a situation, of a story of where you tackled a similar problem. Action for A, what your part in that story is. Result for R, so what was the outcome of your action within this story? And then the T I like to add at the end to make it the start is the takeaway. So really they're looking for that last part, the action, result, and takeaway. You don't need to spend a ton of time going over the background or going into the specifics. That's where a lot of my clients will get way too into the weeds, way too in depth, when really they're trying to focus on how do you problem solve? How do you work through the thought process? What questions did you consider? What challenges did you face? And how did you navigate those? So that's really what the behavioral questions are focusing on. And so if you can have about 5 or 6 stories, depending on, and I know that sounds like a lot, right? But there's typically about 5 or 6 types of behavioral questions. So if you can have a story for each of those questions, you can usually tweak one of those stories depending on how they ask it. So I think preparation is key, and also being aware of what those role-specific questions are, being aware of your resume. So being ready to explain anything on your resume. For that piece, I encourage people to practice with somebody who's unfamiliar with their background and just have them choose something random on your resume to ask about. That way you can get used to and familiar with explaining your experience. So role-specific questions, ask ChatGPT. Behavioral questions, you can find a lot online and focus on the START method. Resume-based questions, know your resume, be ready to explain those areas. And then also be ready to ask them questions. Almost every interview, they're going to say, what questions do you have for me? A lot of times our minds go blank when that happens. So I will actually bring notes to every single interview I'm on. And then also I will take notes during that interview as well, in case they bring up a good point I want to circle back to later. This is also a great strategy for you to remember key points that you would like to bring up in your answers too. But write those questions down early on, bring them to the interview, and that way you can go ahead and ask, because you don't want to hop into an environment that's going to burn you out or force you to mask, or maybe your supervisor has a very different communication style. So I won't necessarily go in detail on all those questions to ask right now, but those are some different types of interview questions you can prepare for and how.
Absolutely. And we are having a lot of activity in the chat right now, and I want to move on to the next question, but just two quick things. One is that somebody in the chat has mentioned that, you know, they often lose their train of thought in the middle of answering a question. And it can be really hard when, like, you know, your brain is all scrambly and you have a million different thoughts happening at once, and everything. As opposed to like the START method, which I know works for a lot of people, but for a lot of people, it doesn't work. Maybe, you know, your brain just works a little bit differently. The way I like to approach it is, you know, if you do the work ahead of time to really understand yourself, your skills, and, you know, think of your professional self as a special interest. Think of a special interest that you have right now, something that you know inside and out. What if you could know yourself as a professional as well as you know that topic? And how much easier would it be to recall that information? And, you know, bonus points if you can get passionate about it and if you can spark that excitement. So hopefully that might be a starting point and a different way of reframing what it is to go into an interview and talk about yourself. The second thing I want to mention is that I popped a article in the chat called Job Interview Questions with Hidden Meanings, a guide for neurodivergent professionals. And I wrote that a little while back because I know that there are a lot of questions that they ask that don't seem straightforward and feel like they're trick questions. And so maybe that article might be helpful to some of you guys there. But in the interest of time, I know we have a lot of live questions that are popping up right now, and I want to get through a couple more of the pre-submitted before we jump on those. But let's go to the next question here. Can you talk about how to find work when you don't have that many people in your network who can help you with your career, and how to leverage your network to help find a job? So I know this is definitely within your wheelhouse, Ash. So why don't you take it away? What are your thoughts?
I love and hate networking so much. I'm an ambivert, which means I alter between introvert and extrovert, kind of depending on the setting and how much my energy level is, time of day, all that. So when COVID happened, virtual networking really allowed me to open up in terms of finding new Facebook groups, finding meetups online, finding LinkedIn groups, connecting with people on LinkedIn, especially if they're in my field. I know this can be very intimidating to introduce yourself to somebody online when you don't know what to say, you don't have anything in common, anything like that. So I work with my clients to come up with some scripts and templates, and there are definitely items online as well. But at the end of the day, if that's intimidating for you, you can also focus on observing. Many of us are really great at observing and noticing trends. So when you notice that, you like it, repost it, or share it, or comment on it. So my strategy when networking online and starting to build that network within the field of my interest is I'll join these groups or I'll follow these people, and then I'll notice what content they have and see if I can start to interact by adding a comment here and there. Like, oh, that has been on my mind all the time. I love the way you approach this. Or I'm noticing a lot of people, and you'll see me do this in Veronica's group all the time. I'm noticing a lot of people are bringing up this issue. What do you guys think? Or should we get together and really brainstorm this? So adding comments and feedback like that can be really helpful. The in-person networking can get challenging as well. Honestly, I think that's probably a whole different beast. So we'll see if we have time for that. But the other piece is leveraging people when you don't have a lot in your network. We already talked about getting some people online through those groups and social media, even Discord. But also start with your friends, your family. People know people, right? And then also past coworkers, past colleagues, alumni are really easy to connect with through your alumni network or online through LinkedIn. But friends of friends or friends of people you've talked to before, That's really kind of the mindset you want to get into with networking, and seeing, oh, do you know somebody who works in public relations? Do you think that you'd be able to give me an introduction? I'd love to learn more about what they do on a day-to-day basis. So approaching it from a place of curiosity, of learning about a field or job function, like Veronica said, like it's your special interest. So I'm naturally curious about all things career. That is my special interest. So I'll go ahead and push myself, even if it feels awkward at times, to go ahead and ask, can you tell me more about what you love about your job? What you wish you knew when you started out, or what your favorite skills are to use on a day-to-day basis. If you ask them about their favorite things, that's going to open up a whole special kind of conversation and build that rapport.
Absolutely. And just to add on to that real quick, I mean, you covered so much there, but the flip side is I know a lot of people who talk about networking, especially neurodivergent professionals, what the root of their question usually is around networking is, how can I do this if it's so difficult and overwhelming and so against my nature to be networking? And yet every career professional that I've met always has that idea and that thought that, networking is the only way to get jobs. And yes, it is a very successful way to get jobs, because we as human beings, like we put a lot of trust in our relationships that we build. Like a relationship is something that is much more, viable than just reading off of a resume from a random person, these kinds of things. But that being said, I want to make sure that you guys don't leave here thinking like networking is the only way. It is one very successful way, but if it is working against you in a lot of ways, be kind to yourself and be like, maybe the big networking event in the convention hall with like thousands of people, maybe that's not the place to start. Maybe we start with a smaller, more intimate networking event. Maybe we don't even do events. Maybe we focus on online networking, and maybe you set up online engagements like video calls, so that you have more time to prepare and more time to unwind afterwards, and you don't have to worry about traveling and all that stuff. Think about ways that you can address those challenges that you experience as an as a networker, and try and work with your brain. Like, don't force yourself into a box that other people expect you to do. So hopefully that is helpful there. Yeah.
And wanted to pop in one other thing on that regarding in-person networking events. I hate driving. I feel awkward at a lot of in-person networking events unless I know somebody there, which is also why networking is helpful. But last night I even went to a networking event, and I didn't really talk to anybody until I could sit down and sit next to someone. I asked, hey, can I sit next to you? And then that wound up being my way to talk with someone. And then when somebody went near me to get their name tag, I said, oh, what do you do? And we exchanged some information. I felt very awkward after that and just played on my phone. But also being okay with casual interactions and setting your bar at an attainable goal. My goal is to talk to maybe 2 people at an in-person networking event. And then I can connect with them on LinkedIn afterward, or have a follow-up conversation down the road, and focus on ways I can connect them with the other people. Ways I can help them. That reframe also helps. So those were the items I wanted to add. Totally normal to feel weird while networking.
All right. I want to get in some of the live questions that we have. So I'm just going to move back to this general slide. And just so you know, Ash, I'm going to pop the questions into the chat just so that you can see and read them as well. Again here. So here is the first question that we have here. How can someone balance job hunting while working full time? Well, it isn't easy. We can start off by saying that, but it is almost like having 2 full-time jobs, like, if you're doing that. So maybe, do you have any thoughts about, how you can maybe conserve your energy or be like strategic about like, how you manage your time and efforts and stuff? What do you think, Ash?
Definitely. Energy, effort management, that is huge. So when I was working with college students, it was a matter of identifying what these jobs are that are easier to apply for. So if you went to college and you have access to your career center, chances are you probably have access to a few databases that are not publicly available because your college pays for them for graduates as well. Not always, but sometimes. But I would tell my students, find those within that are easier to apply to, and then save those for the days where you're working or doing a heavy load. And then also identify, okay, which ones are going to take me longer with the application. So on a lot of applications, you'll notice you've got those essay questions that can take up quite a bit of time. I'm not a fan of now caveat to the easier to apply ones. I'm not a fan of LinkedIn Easy Apply. I'm not a fan of Indeed Easy Apply. I haven't found those methods to be particularly successful, but working smarter, not harder is also helpful. So focusing on roles that have recently posted, getting your resume out, even if you don't feel it's 100% ready, using AI strategically. So I love the app called Simplify. It will automatically fill in any of my applications that are on something called Workday, which is an applicant tracking system, or ATS, the robots that scan your resume, basically. It'll automatically fill out a lot of that content based on my profile. So that allows me to apply for jobs a lot quicker. So focusing on what's going to take less time during the work week and then spending time on the weekends to really focus. That, again, energy, effort management, I found that is helpful. And then if you can manage a informational call, or I like to call them coffee chats or Zoom chats, it just feels a lot more natural that way. If you can arrange a Zoom chat once a week, that's awesome. If you can only arrange it once a month, that's still awesome. But trying to find a way to engage with other people too. Sometimes you'll have that natural environment at work, or you'll be able to reach out to a colleague maybe you worked with a while ago and say, hey, let's grab lunch, or do you have 15 minutes? I'd love to catch up.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so important to manage your energy, because, like, a lot of the career advice out there kind of just assumes that we have infinite amounts of energy and infinite amounts of time. Like, the number of times that I've heard people say, like, oh, you should apply to every job you see, and anybody who gives you the time of day, you should talk to them. Like, that is not an effective use of our time. That is the fastest way to burnout, especially if you are working a full-time job as well. So definitely echoing a lot of the stuff that Ash said there, and just recommending that you figure out what is the most taxing and the most exhausting parts of your job hunt. What affects you negatively the most? And then start there and see if you can find ways to accommodate yourself and make it a little bit easier. As Ash said, even 1% easier is better than 0%. And those will add up and make things a lot easier in the long run. It is a really, really tough transition to make, but hopefully it will be worth the effort, and it will really impact the quality of your life. So great. I have a few more here. Let's keep going with the live questions here. Let me pop it into the chat. So the question is, how can you pinpoint what type of career to get into when there isn't anything in particular calling to you, especially when you have to juggle its safeness for autistic people? And that is tough, because, being autistic in this world is not easy, and, having to, get through those barriers, really challenging. However, I do think, personally, I'll just kick us off this time since I'm already talking. I really do think it's important to take stock of what your skills are, what your professional skills are, and what experiences you have that are working in your favor. Those will open up some doors for you there, and give you some options. On top of that, what motivates you? Think about things that you never have to work hard to do. For example, I asked somebody one day and they said video games. It's never hard for me to start video games, and it's never hard for me to continue doing that. Think about why. I mean, video games are designed to help motivate you to continue doing it. They give you points, they give you things like that. What if you were giving yourself points as you were doing a task, for example? Would that be applicable to the type of work that you want to do? Think about your work style and what kind of what kind of criteria needs to be met in order for you to be able to do that work? Will you be able to do that work in the type of job that you are considering right now? These are all questions that I definitely encourage you to ask yourself, and really incorporate what your needs are as an autistic person, and hopefully that will lead you to something that will be best suited for you, and hopefully the person interviewing you will be able to see that potential in you as well. Ash, is there anything you would add to what I just said? What do you think?
So definitely a reason to work with Veronica or myself, first or foremost, because we are skilled in finding those questions to ask. So one of the phrases I'm guilty of, it's really my favorite, is finding what you want and what you don't. And it's almost always easier to start with what you don't. So what things have you not been happy with your career? So these could be supervisor dynamics. These could be tasks. Excel, the numbers move on me. So I know I don't want to be working with Excel or spreadsheets on a day-to-day basis. One-on-one meetings, those energize me. So I'm aware of how the different interactions, the different tools I use will give me energy or take it away. And then also thinking about what populations and work environments you have thrived with before. So I loved working with college students. I love working with career changers. It usually uses my public speaking skills because I help them work on interviews, use my creative writing skills because we're focusing on changing their brand and resume. So really kind of thinking about what are the things you enjoy doing, and what are the things that you couldn't pay me enough to do, basically. I know a lot of people feel forced to just apply for anything, do anything. As autistic individuals, we don't really have that luxury. We have to be very aware that we're going into environments sometimes that are not as open or accepting. So we have to advocate for our needs. And I also work with clients to identify what are the companies, how can we verify the companies are neuroaffirming, but even more importantly than the companies, the supervisor and team fit. So I'll walk them through interview questions to help assess that before you're on the job. Because last thing you want to do is lose your health, feel like you're regressing skill-wise, feel like you're losing a battle at work. Nobody wants to feel that way.
Absolutely. Let's hop on. I know we're just at the halfway point here and we got lots of questions to get through. So let's hop back to some of the pre-submitted questions here on the screen. The question is about AI and the job hunt. Aside from ChatGPT, are there any other online tools or resources that can make job hunting easier? Why don't we toss it over to you, Ash? Are there any that pop off the top of your head?
So Simplified, like I said, that's a browser extension. I'm a big fan of that. Taking a look at Chrome browser extensions can be really helpful. You have to also know that trying AI takes time, and finding processes that work for you take time. So when I was in the job search last year, I was trying everything under the sun. That included websites like Resume Worded, which can help you work with your resume keywords, with your LinkedIn profile. I worked with Teal. Teal wound up being overwhelming because of the accessibility settings on my computer, but there are some options for it to be a good job search tracker. For me, Simplify is better because once I apply, it gives me a pop-up and I can quickly say, yes, I did these things. So it's really a matter of finding out which tools work best for you, but do not feel like you have to try them all. If you find one thing that's working, that is awesome. I love ChatGPT because it goes highly technical, and a lot of my clients are highly technical or having to explain highly technical concepts to less technical people. So I find ChatGPT is great with that. But Microsoft Copilot, it also is great for pulling things out that are currently live on the internet. So that might be more helpful as a kind of scraper tool. And then Google Job Alerts, I swear by. I absolutely love Google Job Alerts because you can get specific with the criteria, and it's more accurate than LinkedIn when it comes to experience. And also you get emailed those jobs. So taking a look at the different job boards, taking a look at Chrome extensions, but also realizing everybody's going to find a different tool that's helpful for them.
Absolutely. I'm just going to pop one of my favorites in the chat as well here. It's called Goblin Tools. And if you haven't heard of it, there are a ton of really great tools on there. But the one that I'm recommending for this particular format is the Formalizer, which is really great for taking plain language and turning it into a more formal tone, if that is something that you are looking to try and emulate in your job application, in your resume, in your cover letter, and all that kind of stuff there. But yeah, Ash, those are definitely some really great recommendations. A lot I haven't heard of before, so I'm going to have some stuff to dig into after our call. Let's move on to the next question here. This one's about resumes and AI. Is AI a good thing or bad thing when it comes to writing your resume? How should I be using it, or should I avoid it? And there's that big there's that always that big AI debate. And I know that in the Facebook group, AI is such a touchy subject because a lot of people feel that, like, yeah, there are moral aspects to it. Of course, we're neurodivergent. We have that sense of justice, and we want to make sure that things are in line with our values and morals and stuff like that. But at the same time, it is such a helpful tool. And it is like, and you know, honestly, like, I don't blame anybody who uses it, because it is a matter of using the tools that are readily accessible to try and, you know, find a job and make a living and everything like that. So I understand, you know, the hesitation, but I think what this question is, before I went on that huge tangent, was, is it a good or bad thing when it comes to actually applying? As in, will it get you disqualified? Will it actually work in your favor? How should you be using it? So maybe, Ash, with that very long introduction, why don't you take it away and tell me your thoughts?
So quick side tangent before I get to that, you will see that Veronica has circled back to answering the question and addressing what the question was. So that's a great strategy whenever we go off topic or we dive too deep into something, is redirecting and saying back to what the question was addressing. So that's an interview strategy. But anyway, back to AI. Is it a good thing, bad thing? Will it help? It really depends how you're using it. I will say recruiters are so aware now of what a AI generated cover letter looks like, of what an AI generated resume looks like. I don't know necessarily that they're using AI to detect AI. I don't know if they're there yet, but I do know that recruiters are still looking at those resumes, even if the ATS, the robot scanning your resumes, regardless of what score they give you, they are glancing at your resume, but they're spending about 6 seconds on it. So when it comes to your resume, you don't want to have AI write it for you, because they will fill it full of words that are fluff, that don't tell the reader anything specific. So ChatGPT is notorious for this. Well, really, any AI is notorious for this. It'll talk about different, variety, etc. I collaborated with a team on such and such, or on a cross-functional team to demonstrate leadership. It's nonsense. As neurodivergent individuals, we want to get to the point. So does your reader. You want to get very specific with what you did, how you did it, and what impact it made. The other downside with AI is it will fabricate anything. So when we talk about quantifying our achievements or accomplishments, they will fabricate numbers, or they will fabricate experiences. So you have to check the AI's work if you are using it. It can be helpful to detect keywords that the ATS or that the hiring manager or recruiter are looking for, depending on what prompt you give it. However, even that, the way I've seen people use keywords and the way I've seen them use like JobScan or different scanners online, like even Teal, you're adding those soft skills in there, when really problem solving, cross-functional communication, teamwork, all of that, like, we don't need to see that on your resume. We'd rather see that demonstrated through your skills. Directed a team of 12 to XYZ. So AI, mixed feedback. I will say, as a resume reviewer and resume writer, I've used it constantly to learn more about industry specific technology and to review job descriptions, especially trends, finding trends in job descriptions for technical skills, technical keywords. I would always specify technical if you're going with AI, but really I'm still way better at it if I pull up a Microsoft Word version of the resume and I go through and highlight key phrases. ChatGPT will almost always miss those. And those are really the skills and experiences they're looking for. So yes and no, it kind of depends. And it depends on how you're tweaking the prompts and giving the AI feedback and how you're tweaking it once you're done.
There you go. I don't have anything to add to that. That was really comprehensive. So I'm going to take a couple more live questions now. So just check the chat here. The question is, how do I not get too real during interviews? This question is real. Oh my goodness. How do I not get too real during interviews? I struggle with staying conscious that I am not supposed to out myself in a way. Maybe it means I'm not supposed to out myself, but getting too real during interviews, letting down your mask and not being able to like keep up the professional mask or however you're dealing with it, I totally get it, because, we as neurodivergent people, we value our authenticity. We just want to have those deep, meaningful conversations. And, it's really difficult when that's not matching the expectations of the person who you're talking to, when they're expecting a surface level answer and you get really deep, or vice versa. So how can Ash, do you have any initial thoughts about this particular question?
So deep but brief. That might be kind of the way to think about it. They want to see your passion. They want to see specifics, but they're looking for specifics. Like they're paying attention for the action results takeaway if you're thinking about those behavioral answers, rather than the specifics of the situation and getting into all the details there. Practice and notes. So we've got transcription AIs where you can talk into it, you can see what it comes back out with, and then you can identify these are the themes or primary things I want to make sure I say. So not that you're writing out every single sentence of your answer, but you're highlighting those key points. So I will do that on a note card and like flashcards like in school and quiz myself on that. Practicing with your friends or people in your industry, practicing with AI. So I use ChatGPT upgraded to practice with its voice AI and get feedback on my answers. But even if you listen to your own responses on a voice recording app, you'll get a better sense of, okay, that was unnecessary information, or that's the core of what I'm trying to get at. I wish I had a better answer for in the moment checking your mask. All I can say is it's okay to take a breath before you answer a question. You don't have to dive straight into the details. You can even say, that's a great question. Repeat back the question, make sure you understand it correctly, and then go into it. So that'll buy you a few seconds to even think about it.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's really true. I sometimes find myself stalling. Like, for example, I very easily, like, sometimes I'm like, so just to be clear, is this what you're looking for? Like in this, just to show that you're really invested in making sure they get the information that they need to make their evaluation. Be helpful and be like, just to be clear, like, is this the kind of information that you're looking for? Like, let me tailor my answer to that. And all of a sudden you're super helpful. You're not just like, asking questions just for no reason, right? So yeah, definitely a tough one, but something that is very, very relatable to, I'm sure, a lot of people in this presentation right now.
So I want to mention something you just said, Veronica. Brilliant, that exact phrasing. I was on several interviews last year based on the job description. I thought I was very clear on what they were looking for. So I was looking for tech roles. One was in customer success, and another one was helping onboard new customers, which you'd think they are similar. They are also very different. And in both of those roles, I was told I focused on the wrong area. So even asking that clarifying question at the beginning when there's asking, tell me about yourself or share with me more about your background, was there something specific about my background that really resonated with you when you saw me as a candidate that you'd like me to expand upon? Even asking that can kind of set the tone for the interview because now you know what they're looking for.
Absolutely. Let's go on to the next question here. This is a bit of a longer one. I'm just popping it into the chat. So it said, here's the question. My novel. Okay, so there's a novel. Let's go with that. I worked for the same company or industry as a very specific subject matter expert for 23 years. And now am starting from scratch. I'm overwhelmed by being able to translate my resume with transferable skills as well as simply where to job search, especially as remote work is preferred for my mental health. Adding to both being ADHD and autistic and trying to heal from burnout, it is frustrating. I am open to suggestions. Thanks. First off, that is a lot to be dealing with. I am so sorry that you feel like, you must be feeling very like, uprooted from something that you've been an expert in for 23 years and now trying to start from the beginning. That is difficult. So I just want to acknowledge that that is something very challenging. That being said, there are ways to deal with it. I mean, me and Ash, work with people every single day who are making these types of transitions. So there is hope. Let's start there. I mean, the first thing that pops into my head personally is a skills-based resume. Having a skills-based resume is a really great an alternative way to format your resume, because a lot of us think that resumes have to look a certain way in order to be considered official. Whereas a resume is technically a document that is supposed to convey your qualifications and help them get a starting point of what you are able to do. Technically, that could take any form if you really wanted to. I once saw a video of a guy online who dressed up as a delivery driver, delivered a box of donuts with his resume attached to the inside of the box of donuts to his employer of choice. And guess what? They read the resume. I don't know if he got the job, but they read that, and you can be sure of it, right? So the point is yes, there is what is expected in a resume. There is meeting expectations, but there is also what can I do to tweak it to make it even more impactful? And that's why, that's where people come up with those crazy ideas. Now, a skills-based resume is not that crazy of an idea. What it does is, instead of organizing chronologically your experiences, we organize it by the transferable skill that applies to both what you have done in previously and what you want to be doing in your new job. And so I'd say that that's probably the first place you want to look, is with this new target job that you want to look for. Hopefully you've done some thinking about that. Look for those transferable skills and see if you can build a resume around it. And really, that really highlights the fact that, yeah, I've done these in different contexts, and look at this, it all adds up to me being a great fit for this position. Ash, I said a lot there, but do you have anything you would add or adjust? What would you say?
Yeah, definitely. So in addition to a skills-based resume, you also have something called a hybrid resume. So this is by comparison of, instead of the chronological resume or the skill-based resume, it's a combination resume. So where you can lump related experience toward the top and other experience toward the bottom. So that's another option. Additionally, having a summary to highlight whatever your tagline is. So for example, last year, and I wanted to just normalize what you're going through. I'm working with a lot of federal workers, a lot of therapists, and also was in this situation myself last year with 10 plus years in higher ed, trying to move into educational technology. So struggle is definitely real, but the summary and related experience, what this can do is call yourself, for example, an educational technology professional or whatever the job title is, and try to really focus on, here are the skills that are highly relevant. So for example, I was a university customer working with X number of platforms on user management, on onboarding materials, like getting into the technical pieces of it that were also transferable from my experience. So it's kind of like a combination of navigating those transferable skills and that technical industry or role specific jargon. So it's leveraging them both. And then also working on your LinkedIn identity and your interview answers, your cover letter. If you're going with the cover letter, I could honestly do a whole rant on cover letters, so we'll save that for another time. But focusing on shifting your brand to this new area. So for me, that looks like following new people in that industry, changing my skills section, changing the way I talk about my past experiences, and changing that about section on LinkedIn and that headline, or on your resume, the summary section, to really focus on, this is the industry I'm going in. I am qualified because I have these experiences. And last but not least, if you don't have those experiences, so for example, maybe a specific software, then it's time to think about how can you gain those experiences so you can add them to your resume. Because one of the roles I was looking at needed that software experience as the bare minimum. And that's why I kept not getting interviews. So kind of keeping that in mind too, what are they looking for? And that's also why networking or LinkedIn stalking can be helpful, because then you have an idea of what that industry is looking for.
Absolutely. And just so you know, I popped a blog article into the chat called 5 Neurodivergent Friendly Tips We Learned About Resumes and CVs from a previous office hours that I did. So if anybody finds that helpful, the recording is in there. There's a summary in there with 5 different tips. So definitely check that out. But I think we have time for one more question. And we had one more in the chat. So why don't I just pop that in, Ash, and we'll wrap it up there. But the question is, I've done so many things at each job beyond my scope. So I feel like I'm adding way too many things to my resume. How much detail should actually be added to the experience sections? So how much is too much, Ash? Tell me, what do you think?
Ooh, depends. I'm used to working with students who have 3-page resumes because they're including everything since high school. Please don't do that. Resumes, again, a recruiter spends 6 seconds on a first glance at a resume. They're not going to be able to read it all. And really, that's why I keep bringing branding up as a key, because even in that 6 seconds, it should scream like the role that you're looking for, that you are a great candidate because you have these skills and keywords and phrases that you're looking for. But at the same time, it should be detailed enough for somebody in the field, like a hiring manager, to look at it and know what it means too. So for example, I worked with students in machine learning, so designing things like ChatGPT and all these other really cool large language models, which I had to use ChatGPT to understand what those terms even meant. But basically, they had to use the term in the job description, machine learning, in order to get past the recruiter and seen by the ATS. But then they went into what kind of specific areas of machine learning, the specific techniques or algorithms they use. That way the hiring manager also knew. So in terms of detail, it depends on the role and depends on the needs in the job description. Sounds like you have an excellent master resume that you can copy and paste pieces from, but it's a matter of recognizing that 1 to 2 pages is more than enough. And again, focusing on whatever's most relevant, that is key. I've worked on executive resumes where it's 8 bullets under 1 experience, or possibly even more, because you're dividing it into the skills. But again, if it's not relevant, don't put it on your resume.
Absolutely. I don't have anything to add to that. That was fantastic. And we're coming to the end of our session here. So I just wanted to once again thank you, Ash, for being here. Ash is a fantastic career counselor and educator specializing in helping neurodivergent folks, has tons of experience in there, and I highly recommend them as somebody who can mentor you and guide you just like I can. And obviously, we both kind of have overlap in similar similar areas, but you know, different. I believe that, you know, it's important for you to find the right coach that suits you. So somebody who would be suited to Ash might not necessarily be suited to me. So definitely, I hope that you resonated with one or both of us during this session here. But you know, I definitely trust you know, everything that they have to offer there. And so with that said, we do have a free industry guide from Ash that I'm going to drop into the chat in case any of you would find it helpful. But Ash, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, definitely. So with being neurodivergent, a lot of times when somebody asks what we want to do or what else we can do, nothing comes to mind, right? So we need that visual cue. We need that reminder of what else is out there. I will warn you, this handout, this guide is information overload. Because I focused on the highly specific areas in each industry. So now you've got an idea of job functions and industries that are out there. So if you're using this guide, I highly recommend only look at 2 to 3 categories that you might be interested in, and maybe kind of highlight parts of those categories and pop that into ChatGPT or whichever AI you like. And ask it some questions about this. So for example, what does a ghostwriter do? How do you find ghostwriting jobs? What are the transferable skills, or what should I have in my portfolio? What's the outlook look like? How many jobs are out there? And I forgot to mention also a big thing when it comes to the job hunt, and I should have mentioned this at the beginning, is also where you're located. So in the US, we are having tons of layoffs of federal jobs, of IT, of educators. We're having a lot of layoffs, period. So that's going to change the dynamics of the job market. So kind of keeping in mind, again, what your particular landscape looks like and what those resources are is incredibly important. And this is also why, again, networking is a big deal. I know every time I say networking, you guys are cringing. I promise it. There are easier ways to do it. It does not have to be a monster. And I'm actually working on a program for networking while neurodivergent. So that's going to come out in a few months. Hopefully that helps.
I'm really excited to find out about that one because I know like so many people who would be interested in that. But once again, I have linked the Google Drive link for the free industry guide in the chat. So be sure to check that out. I just pinned it. There's also a link in the chat to book a call with Ash. If you want to chat a little bit, you can see here that there is a limited time offer for a 30% off a resume and LinkedIn profile review. And I'm sure that they would be happy to hear about what you need and see if there's any alignment. But I shouldn't be speaking for you. Is that true?
Yes, definitely. So I offer a 15-minute career strategy session for free with anybody who's interested in my services or anybody who just needs some guidance either way. Try to make sure everybody leaves that session, whether they work with me or not, with 1 to 2 action steps they can implement pretty quickly. So I'd love to chat with you guys more.
Absolutely. And just real quick about me here, I also am a career coach for neurodivergent professionals. Feel free to email me at veronica@atypicalcareers.com if you have any questions or you just want to chat a little bit and see if your needs align with my services. I'd be happy to chat there. Real quick, I also want to tell you guys about my passion project that's been coming up. And Ash has actually been helping me a lot with this, with my latest course for A Buzz Academy. And I'm so excited to be sharing it with you. It's going to be a career resource library designed for neurodivergent professionals so that we can actually get career resources that are tailored for our unique brains and what we need. So definitely stay tuned for that. I'm actually just going to pop a link to the website in case you want to join the mailing list and get updates about that. So that is in the chat now as well.
I cannot recommend that enough. Real quick, just
I am so excited for it.
The content is incredible, guys. Just make sure you're reading up her blogs and then also signing up for that mailing list. Like I said, just incredible content.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to see where it goes. And just real quick, I know a lot of you probably found us off of the Facebook group, but in case you're not part of our group, it is over 75,000 neurodivergent professionals from around the world helping each other, answering each other's questions, and all that kind of stuff. So if you're on Facebook, be sure to check it out. And that's basically it. So I wanted to thank Ash for all of your expertise and your time. You know, I've really enjoyed working with you. And, you know, I know that I have the feeling that, you know, your advice helped a lot of people today. Any final things you want to say before we wrap up?
It's hard out there. It's hard and it sucks. And for a lot of us, it's just going to get harder. So please be kind to yourself. Please do what you can to take care of yourself. Ask for help in that Facebook group or by working with a coach or working with a therapist to manage your mental health. At the end of the day, you are worth so much more than your job or salary. Remember that.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. So that brings our session to the conclusion, guys. I will be sending out a recording in the next week or so. So please stay tuned for that. Otherwise, thank you so much for being here. You know, feel free to see yourself out and we will see you online. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care.